I will comment on a teaching that happened just at the beginning of lunch. When I was teaching about the Tathagata experience, and the food delivery person knocked on the door, if I had not been in the state of Tathagata, I would have considered this as an interruption to the teaching. And I would not have shown you it just happened. Because I would say, oh, okay, well, we have to stop because we're interrupted. And you would have thought in this mindset of cause and effect and means to an end and something that went wrong or not as it was supposed to just happen. So as I was in that state of Tathagata, when I noticed it happened, teaching is over. Which allowed you to say, oh, that's how it works. And using it as a teaching. Did you notice that I have a way to teach you, trying to trigger you into those states? And the part of you that still doesn't know how to go in these elevated states fall into a state of admiration. Now, I'm very happy you don't adore me as a god, or you have your butt kicked quite quickly. But when you go in a state of admiration, which is not adoration, I know about that. When you feel admiration, great respect, and so touched with the teachings, I know that some part of you will have this kind of admiration that, if not dealt with, could give me power over you. But as a Tathagata, I know you're going through that process, and I will not prevent it. I'm going to allow it, and sometimes what I know to teach you is to inspire you, and when you are inspired with someone, you admire usually that person who just inspired you. I will also use this as a teaching. It's not like if I wanted that admiration. It's not like if it would bring me anything. But I understand it because I admire you for what you do as a person who is processing that wisdom and applying it in your life. Allowing you to discover that state of admiration is permitting you to taste what attitude you should have towards yourself. When you see the way I teach, how much passion I have for you to evolve, eventually you'll be able to turn that focus around towards yourself and see, that is so much passion I have to evolve. So even when a master, such as myself, and many others that are very good, allow you to go into the state of admiration of the master, this will not be used for the sake and the benefit of the master. The only thing that matters is the result. That can be so confusing because sometimes the result is people getting mad. You know, when I go to terrible Dharma, hardcore teaching, some people are angry. I'm just here talking. And I go and boom, I freely insult someone, and everyone who loves that person starts to hate me. And I do this because you wanted to see what kind of reaction you still had inside you, which were not accomplishment of compassion. I'm going to prove it to you through experience. Boom. And you go into a state of non-compassion. Of course, I also have to endure the projection of your hatred. Or, the arrogance of thinking that I would be inappropriate. And the arrogance of thinking that I'm the one being arrogant simply because you would not dare look at yourself being the arrogant one who doesn't want to see the wisdom in what I did. But you asked for it, or else I wouldn't have shown you. You see, there's people I never go and trigger for two reasons. Either someone who didn't ask for it, because I respect your free will, or someone that even though they ask, is not useful. Gratitude is essential. Thank you for sharing that wisdom. I'm not going to try to use this in a way to manipulate you into loving me. I'm going to use this as a way to manipulate you into loving yourself. And it will be the tool of manipulation. Because each time I'm telling you directly, simply love yourself, it doesn't work. I have to move your mind around so that you'll eventually drive into yourself this experience. It will be difficult to understand the true meaning of the wisdom until you perceive it purely as what it is. When you see Dharma exactly as what it is, there is a complete absence of drama. And you see how much this environment as a school is a full strap. We are screwed. There's no way out of it. A definition of a bodhisattva, according to the 17th chapter of the Dhamma Sutra. Any bodhisattva who truly understands the principles of non-self and non-dharma is called by the Tathagata an authentic bodhisattva. Any bodhisattva who thoroughly understands the principles of non-self and non-dharma is called by the Tathagata an authentic bodhisattva. First part of this expression. The bodhisattva that thoroughly understands. Thoroughly understands means understands beyond intellectual requirements. Thoroughly means understand through an experience beyond what we think is understand. Because the word understand today is a word that we use very often in school, for example, when we explain something of a highly intellectual nature. So when we say understand, we think solely by intellectual computation we could get the holy wisdom, which is not accurate. The word understand in a culture where pretty much no one went to school and no one had to go through intensive intellectual processes, the word understand did not mean intellectual computation such as today. So when we read a sutra like this, thoroughly understand, the word understand throws off in a wrong direction if that understanding is how the ego experiences understanding. Through logic. Understand thoroughly means that there is a unthorough or weak level of understanding. It means to go beyond the surface to see the signless in the signs. Yes? Understand means the experience. If something happens and you experience a wisdom and you have a wow moment, I get it. But it's not logical. Yet you purely understand, totally. Because there is a rich experience where the Dharma is supported by live events that cause your consciousness to understand and not your mind. Your consciousness has a wow moment, a bing moment. Ding! I get it. She's angry because I forgot her birthday. Cause and effect. Now, that's a very low level understanding wow moment. but you can refer to it. Okay? So the first part of this excerpt is a bodhisattva who thoroughly understands the principles of non-self and non-dharma. Now, there's no way of intellectually understanding what is non-self until you free yourself of the idea of the self and still stay existing and say, there is still a self, undefined according to the ideas I had of what is the self. Therefore, it is the consciousness. Through a thorough understanding, through experience, non-self. But we're still here because we would stop existing. And yet we don't. So if you stop having any conceptions of what is a self, you understand thoroughly non-self because of the experience. And that is somewhat what we do when we go into a state of vacuity. And we try to stay in that state of vacuity while focusing on the manifested. And there's something that still persists in consciousness of the nothing of something. And then you get the wow moment. Non-self. You still have to work on it. Okay? It's somewhere where when you fall in the cracks of reality. You know, when you drop a dime and it falls in the cracks of the floor. In this case, it's when you fall in between two instances of Dravyamaya, when you go beyond the illusion of gross senses and intellectual understanding. Any bodhisattva who thoroughly understands the principles of non-self and non-dharma. What is non-dharma? It is wisdom beyond your ability to call it wisdom or to refer to it. Now, that is even more abstract than dharma. In dharma, in the delivery of wisdom, I taught you what dharma is with the Lotus Sutra example. In the dharma, there is still a surface phenomena of apparent goal to achieve. Like if there was a controlled environment to deliver the wisdom. Non-dharma is that tathagata simplicity about the wisdom. And in the same way that in non-action there seems to be an action but there isn't, from the point of view of non-distinction. In non-self there seems to be a self but there's none, from the point of view of no distinction. And in non-dharma there still seems to be that wisdom experience, but freed from any human conception of what wisdom is useful for. A bodhisattva who thoroughly understands the principles of non-self and non-dharma is called by the Tathagata an authentic bodhisattva. An authentic bodhisattva is called by the Tathagata. And the Tathagata is not a single being like the Buddha. The Buddha was not referring to himself declaring someone, yeah, you're a bodhisattva, not you. No. We are called bodhisattva by the Tathagata, by our experience of the just that. It happened. Or it's happening. Because it happened, it still has a reference to time, but it's just words, you know. Words have all their flaws because a word is always a metaphor of what it could mean. And the more we waste energy in trying to argue, yeah, but you said at that time, the next state, you say it happened, it's in the past. Yeah, okay, forget it. Okay. Pay attention to the wisdom and not to the inappropriate means that we have to speak about something that is unnameable anyway. Except when you have the experience of it. Then you call it anything you want, and whoever got the experience can say, oh yeah, I got that. I remember, I got the experience. And even if the words were accurate, it still would not be a competent word, a competent means to teach someone who didn't get the experience to which the word refers, okay? That bodhisattva who thoroughly understand because of the wow moment, the consciousness, the comprehension beyond the surface of the intellectual futility, is called by the Tathagata an authentic bodhisattva. And in another way, at another place, it is said, a real bodhisattva is someone who understands that there is no bodhisattva. This is why we call them bodhisattva. Meaning, a bodhisattva achieved his understanding of the experience to go beyond the naming of the actual state of bodhisattva. To understand is not about the words that we use to refer to the experience. It is about the experience itself, unnamed. So we will name it. Why do we name a bodhisattva someone who knows there is no bodhisattva? Because it's useful to refer to stuff with words. You still got to achieve that state of being, not state of mind, state of being, where words are not the Dharma. And consciousness of the wisdom is the true state of non-Dharma, non-self. And you know you are beyond references, so we will refer to you as the one beyond references. Because in this world, we have to. It is samsara. It is a world where stuff happens. And in the simple proclamation, tathagata, the just that, the just what happens, the just coming, the just happening, the structure in nature, free from any type of reference that nature requires to refer to itself, but still good there. And you go beyond that intellectual requirement to understand. I wanted to share you that part before we go on. Because a bodhisattva is not someone who will refuse to use references because he understood references are not the true state of being. A bodhisattva that pretends to be a bodhisattva will pretend in having no reference, no structure, no way of handling things, and say, I'm not a bodhisattva, this is why I'm not a bodhisattva, because if I would be, I wouldn't be a bodhisattva, so I'm not. And start to be complicated about it. Now, a bodhisattva will say, yeah, I'm a bodhisattva. It's how you refer to that state of being, or whatever. Okay? You're at peace with the tools that we have to deal with in this nature. A bodhisattva is someone who has perfected his mind. It's not someone who has denied how he has perfected his mind. It's not someone who rejects the process through which we perfect our mind. And if someone has perfected his mind, how could he be so arrogant to think, I'm not going to teach about that because there's nothing to teach? When he needed that teaching so he could get to the bodhisattva state. You know, this kind of denial of existence that even Sakyamuni Buddha scolded so much his priests and his disciples, you still don't get it. You can't be conscious of the illusion while you deny reality. To be conscious of the illusion is to be conscious of the illusion. It's not to deny what seems to be not the illusion. Okay? In this sense, I will refer to concepts, structures, ideas, systems, exactly like the Buddha Sakyamuni did. You know, as he explains that there is nothing to refer to, but still will do it, because this is how you can learn there's nothing to refer to. And so, there's no goal to achieve, but here is a list of 10 bhumis, and I explain each step you have to make to get to self-realization. Which sounds stupid, because it's like 10 steps to follow to get out of a structure. You know? Chara style, you know? 10 rules to have none. And it's okay, it's an expedient mean. So in this fashion, I mean, you know, the ego will use each new wisdom to try to slow you down on your progress. But if the Buddha Sakyamuni told you there is no ritual and then built 100 rituals to send graces to the bodhisattvas and the Buddhas, and if he told there is no system to follow, no structure, but without them you're doomed, so here's a system. And then use the expedient mean of the boat to cross the river. You're on this shore and you want to get to the other shore, you need the boat. So you use it. And once you're on the other side, don't carry the boat on your shoulders through the dense forest. If that boat, that tool, that means is not useful anymore, ditch the boat. Take a hatchet and go through the dense forest. And once you get to the base of the mountain, well, the hatchet's not useful. Take, climbing equipment to ease your process. You use the tools as you go on. Now, what really disturbs the ego's mind is that there's never any clue to tell him what is the appropriate tool and when. So you have to let go of control of knowing what is the appropriate thing and just have faith to do it. With experience, you'll understand better what is the most appropriate expedient mean. But not through control of this is the rule set. No, everything is so case by case, moment per moment, as it happens. So let's say you have a plan. God has a plan. Buddha in you has a plan. Universal consciousness has a plan. And you don't work according to plan. You think the Buddhas and gods and everything go, oh my God, what are we going to do? The plan hasn't worked. No. There's no plan, but there's one. Let's say a set of instructions of what is the most expedient means for you to evolve a situation. And you have only part of that teaching and something goes wrong and you're at another place. They have no idea of nostalgia of the previous plan that should have delivered some kind of good wisdom, but it's screwed up. They just dismiss entirely everything that happened. From here, what's the best expedient mean? That's it. On the spot re-evolution of every situation with no rules. So if we try to teach you something and you do not get the wisdom exactly how it was supposed to happen, because as a human with an ego, you didn't play along exactly like it would have been most useful for your soul to grow, there's no nostalgia or regret or, oh my God, someone screwed up. It's, what's the next, this is the new situation. Plan from these parameters. Period. No judgment, no holding on to the what went wrong. It didn't go wrong. It did not go wrong. Something happened. From here, what's the next thing? Okay? So the idea of a destiny is a very screwed up concept of evolution. Karma, causality. You did stuff, it causes effects. You have them. It's not sin, it's not punishment, it's cause and effect. The karma for me to teach you is to have the bliss. Because whatever I do for you to get something, I experience that. It's wonderful. Okay? So is it egocentric? No, because I experience it from the place where there's no self to please. And it's beyond measurement. Okay? But nonetheless, I do it in a plan. And you'll never see me say something went wrong. Say, oh, this is the result. Cool. Next step. Okay? Now, I use me as an example, but now I'm going to use me as having nothing to do with it. Each of you have a soul. Each of you has an agenda of your own. And a lot of the Dharma you go through is not planned by the masters who guide you. The masters, they go and say, this is what the soul wants. From these properties, these coordinates, this point of view, how can we reorient the experience to go and get to that objective, if you appreciate the misunderstanding of the word, the objective of the soul in its faithful and non-controlled experience. Okay? The next thing that happens, we can even say that Brahma has no idea what he's going to get from that universal experience. He's just, wow, he's having wow moments. Seeing, oh, so that is what I'm gaining now as a new experience in creation of all things. All right, cool. Next step. As a whole. So this entire thing of, the idea that something is planned, we have a plan. But the plan is based on the fact that it's completely flexible, based on free will, and the only fixed event in that is when our free will was used already in the illusion of a chronological time. Because in here, you can argue that there's no time from any point of view you want, it sure seems to exist. Because we're in that nature. It's okay. Be at peace with that nature. So the plan of your evolution works. So it's even more insecuring to say, we have no idea what's going to happen. Spiritual philosophies most of the time are meant to make you feel reassured. When you die, you will be saved. Or we give you all your donations back. No. When you die, this or that will happen. These rules meant to reassure you instead of heal your sickness of insecurity, the need to control. God has no idea where he's going, but he has faith. So there's no problem. So if you still need an idea, definition of a God that decides what's going on in your life, no way. This is a human thing. The chronological time structure that reassures you that you're on a good spiritual path and this and that. What matters is the result. And the result, after you've gone through the reactions and everything, is a great happiness. And ultimately the self-realization as God. Not as a God, pompous as I'm God, kneel. No, that's not true. Self-realization as God is, we are all that Buddha experience. We're all in that state. It's so wonderful. I'm so happy now. I remember, I've always been that. And so are you. And there's no separation in the reference of me and you except in this realm where there seems to be a difference between you and me. So let's use that. Okay? Breathe. I told you there are 7 planes or 7 levels of reality or illusion of it in the physical plane. Okay? For some people, I explain the 10 planes of consciousness. And at the 10th one, the physical one, there are 7 levels of ego reality in the physical plane. Now the first one is your physical ID. Me, I am that. But not as you think, as you embody. Okay? Your physical identity as what your body refers to itself. As something that exists as a living being, a self, having a lifespan, all of that. Then the organism as a whole, which seems to be the same thing, physical identity, but it's not. The organism as it's a machine, it works. It is the relationship of all the organs together and all the systems together to keep it running. Okay? Which is different than the physical ID of that is me. Now we go to the deeper mechanics of biology. And then at the organs level, each organ has an experience as an ego. And then at the level of each cell. And each cells are made of proteins and various organic chemicals. And deeper than that, the moles or the molecules getting together. There's a point where molecules are just molecules. They're not yet chemical organic stuff. They're still just molecule. That could be anything. Salt is not necessarily organic. It depends how it's used. but it could be. And then there's at the atom level. Each atom has an experience of what is that reality. Okay? Now the sevenfold layers of sub-reality in the physical plane, okay, is not necessarily the 7 planes of hell, but in Kabbalah, in occult sciences, Occidental occult sciences, we say in the physical realm, there are 7 levels of densification, which are the 7 planes of hell, which is not that. That is, we can say, the 7 heavens, if you wanted, the 7 spaces, the 7 layers of depth, or 7, it's still just, this is all the 10th plane. It's just 7 magnitude level. You know, zoom in, zoom out with a microscope. It's just 7 perspectives in depth of experience. And the ego has these 7 layers like an onion. Okay? So it could be 7 realms. It's still just one. It's 7 levels of depth. And in each of these depths, in each of those, there's a part which is soul, a part that is ego, and a part that is hell. Okay? So you get the soul has an experience at each of these levels of physicality. The ego has an experience at each of these layers of physicality, or these levels of magnitude. Now, it's not depth about frequency, it's about refinement of perception. You know, the planes usually, consciousness, causality, wisdom, mental, emotional, vital, physical. This is about the frequency of the height of the vibration. Okay, something is at the level of consciousness, doesn't seem to be at the level of physicality. Now, in this is all at the level of physicality, but this physicality can be refined in the smallest of your perception, or the grossness of your perception, to a certain level, and your ego is conscious of this experience. So there are, if you wish, the 7 realms of the soul in physicality. The 7 aspects of the ego are 7 levels of refinement of your ego. And the 7 planes of hell, when one of these planes inside you starts to take over. And when you have this, it's not necessarily the organs, the organism or the organs, but when you start to have those, and it goes to hell, when shit hits the fan, you have an experience that rises of you of control and lack of faith that we have named demons, when we did not know otherwise. And we're not going to expand on this because it's not required. And we don't want to speak of demonology nor angelology. We want to speak of the truth. That you have an experience of control at the atomic level, at the genetic level. You know, here at the level of cells and whatever composes the inner working of the cells, you have your genetic code right there, 4, 5. Okay? So you could say in physicality, this is the 10th plane as a whole, and how you refer to it if the body could think as a mind, but it doesn't. But, I mean, okay, go beyond the words there. Now, this is like the inner 9th plane of vitality, your organism, the inner 8th plane, the organs representing emotions, the inner 7th plane, the cells as the thoughts, the inner 6th plane, the proteins and your genetic code as also the wisdom, and you know, the inner 5th plane as the molecules of causality of what makes you then consciousness at the inner 4th plane. Of course, I named them from 1 to 7 because it's easier to refer to that. But this is 10, inner 9, inner 8, inner 7, inner 6, inner 5, and inner 4. And your consciousness first built the atoms that would make you interact. Atoms interact, produces molecules. Gain wisdom causes a DNA, a plan, an agenda. So whatever you are as a self above the physical realm is mirrored. You know, what you are vertically as a being is mirrored horizontally in physicality. Okay? That's just entertaining for now. Okay? So we could say from consciousness, this is 10. This is like inner 9, inner 8, inner 7, inner 6, inner 5, inner 4. Okay? So, to integrate at the level of atoms, you need to put conscious at the fourth plane. Forget it, it won't work otherwise. To integrate at the level of molecules, you need to understand causality and what produces stuff. To integrate your DNA, you at least need wisdom. To change your genetic code and work at the level of cells, you at least need to have that wisdom from the soul. And then you grow to the level of cells. To work on your cells, all you need is an intellectual mind and know which medicine to use. You know, the intellect starts to work at this level. And of course, great minds will go deeper in science, of course. But in a gross fashion, let's say we don't have a science of the day, but since the beginning of time, whoever was intelligent enough could start working at a level of cells and organs just by knowing how to feel stuff and understand nature as it is. The organism as a whole, you simply need willpower. Exercise, I guess. And you need to be physically embodied to understand what is your physical ID, or how the physical experience of your soul refers to itself, thinking that is what I am. And maybe it is. Maybe your body is what you are, but not from the ego's point of view, from the soul's point of view. There's no distinction. Ooh, breathe. Now, you won't have to go through the 21 masks of the ego 7 times to understand each of these depths. It simply allows you to understand. If your organism as a whole becomes weak, you know how to work at it. Exercise, use your willpower. If your organism as a whole, the level of ego at this, very gross depth, starts to control, you'll become lazy. And eventually will give rise to Mammon, the demon of cupidity. If at the level of your organs, you start to go in a state of control, your organs, the liver, when it doesn't work, you have trouble handling your anger and your happiness at the physical level because it affects your entire system, When we say when you're very angry and you don't express it, you kill the liver, there's a metaphysical explanation of this. Well, let's say, for example, if at the level of liver you have a state of control installed there from the liver ego experience, which is still all of your ego, you get angry, it compiles, it adds up, densifies, summons an Astaroth demon, for example, which is a demon of anger. Okay? And you go like this until you could exist at the level of atoms consciously, or in the opposite, your atomic structure controls you. Well, that's pretty much what it does right now, and you're enslaved to Asmodai. Everything you want to do is always for your own pleasure. Egocentrism. Regardless of equity or iniquity. Asmodai is not an evil demon, it just doesn't give a fuck. He has absolutely no evil intentions. I know him personally. Of course, if you take the time to observe what it really means, you'll understand it. Okay? You see, all this system holds up together. It makes sense. Helps your intellectual mind understand stuff. It's cool. It's fun. Okay? The most important thing in this is not what we've told about the 7 planes of hell, but the 7 depths of refinement that your ego can work at. And sometimes you've seen your ego's immediate reaction, and when you work at it, you see sometimes how subtle and so refined it is. You start thinking, oh, I just saw like causality, what produces what and this and that, and your ego freaks out. Because if you start perceiving causality in the planes of consciousness that I often talk about, projected on your human level of experience, on your physical experience of the ego, if you understand causality, the way the molecules arrange themselves in your body are affected. So if you have the wisdom of the fifth plane, if the wisdom of causality, even the chemistry of your body starts to heal itself, simply because you're back into a state of faith, appreciation of the wisdom of causality. It will reflect physically at this depth. So you have to gain the consciousness of fourth plane or full consciousness of what you are to go and affect the core of even the atomic structure of your body. Alright? Breathe. Be happy. Enjoy that wisdom. Okay? That's a mirror, the 7 inner physical layers of the actual bigger experience of all our levels of consciousness. So the higher is your consciousness, your level of perception, your refinement of thorough understanding of the Dharma, the deeper you have an effect in nature. Because I've been talking about your body here, and this is not limited to your body. If you have consciousness at this level, you can affect anything in nature to this depth. Supernatural intervention. Right? That's why to transmute water into wine takes at least this depth. Because it changes molecules. Okay? Which explains why Raphael is still failing to transmute water into apple juice, because he's really fond of that depth. So when he does it, it changes the sugar level and the acidity of the water, but it doesn't get the apple taste or the apple fiber or structure or protein, anything that has to do with a deeper understanding of the experience or the deeper concentration has a soul. But it's so cool because he had tested the original sample he kept and the one he worked on and have it taste to other people and say, yeah, this is that, and this is like very acid and sweet. It's still not apple juice. But he operates the transmutation to a certain extent. I'm teaching this to him. So this is how he can learn that stuff, that supernatural intervention. That's how his ego cannot fight with it. When he tried it after a few weeks of practice, of course, and other people can testify, that is definitely a sweet acid drink, and that is like water with, what's in it? It's water with just a tad of apple juice. Because you need to have just a bit of the molecules of the substance you want to target. For example, Jesus had the water pulled into where was wine, so that the traces of wine in these vases he could use and replicate it inside. Okay? It's like an Excel sheet where you just need a few information in a corner to do it copy-paste everything, and then copy-paste everything and just fill everything with that new structure and overwrite the other information in those Excel sheet cells before. It's like the matrix with code. Okay? It works about like, it's a metaphor because today we find it easy to understand. Okay? When he multiplied the fish and the bread, he said there was a few bread lumps and a few fishes left for hundreds of people. He said, put it in the baskets. So the mind that there is fish and bread in the basket works, boom, the many. Multiplication. Alright? That's fun. And to understand just small talk, how to operate supernatural stuff. Some people can create new matter, but not someone who is an incarnation of Vishnu. In an incarnation of Vishnu, someone who has accomplished himself as a Christ will be able to operate the nature how he wants, but not create something that did not exist. That takes a Brahma experience, which is just one step above. You have to become the creator. Jesus sometimes made something out of nowhere. And that's me and my Father are one. Me and the origin is the same thing. So if I'm the creator, hallelujah. Okay? But in most of his miracles, he's the Vishnu, because it's so much easier to be an incarnation of Vishnu than a phenomena of Brahma, even very temporarily. Okay? Took me 82 days to create 2 grains of sand. So fuck it. That's an awful waste of time and resource. When I saw the grains of dirt, so just start happening and say, okay, forget it. Just wipe that off the table, and if I have ever another 2-3 months to waste on that, maybe I'm gonna try something. As opposed to the Vishnu level, just operating what is already there, just using the matrix as software. I like this example because it's so close. It's not the true reality of how it works, but it's so close the way that the movie The Matrix presented. It really looks like that from an ego's point of view outside. When you have the experience, there's no effort. It's just a state of being. Okay. You enjoyed that small talk? Explanations? Okay, details? Now all of this is not fixed. Okay, all of this is not hardcore rule. It's just a very good design that you can use to imagine what it could be. Then you have to use this to push you out of it. Use this as a way to understand everything we experience physically is a reflection of whatever we experience as a soul at every level. Because we have an agenda, self-re-evaluating each instance of time regardless of that timelessness. The supernatural intervention, the quantum metaphysics, the manifestation, contains the wisdom that is required to achieve it. The deeper your level of spirituality and the deeper you incarnate as a soul, the more physical you are as a soul and conscious at the highest level. Stretch your into consciousness. The more power you have on altering nature. And at a point where there's no effort, you just think, and the thinking is the event in nature. And quite some of you actually here have experienced this very often. Remember, your ego as a conscious being has access to every supernatural potential that you have. So even if you have not charged the power, if you have a power of non-locality, stuff in your luggage can disappear. So I'm just using actual examples. Every seminar use the closest stuff to the seminar. So yes, there's cool stuff that can happen when I tell you if you have more power than compassion, more power than harmony, electronic devices around will just flip out because you're affecting the electricity. It's not flowing in harmony with the nature. If you accept the nature purely as it is, if you stop being angry at how nature is built as a classroom, as a way to evolve, and are at peace, stop judging, everything what we did in the first part this morning. If you're at peace with how nature works and how it serves God, how could it be any otherwise than to be in service of God? If you're at peace with the wonders and the perfection, with faith of this nature, it will not react to you. The reason why devices and stuff mishappen around you is because you are reacting to it. And it just takes the vertical reaction, push it down to the horizontal physical plane, and you have your physical manifestations of devices that stop working and shit that happens. If you are empowered as a divine being, or even if you don't remember yourself as a divine experience, let's say you're empowered as a soul, conscious beyond the ego, or as the ego beyond itself. If something goes wrong in nature, your harmony could repair it without you doing anything, no intervention. Stuff that go wrong can simply start to go right again, according to your controlled hopes. If you're in harmony with it, if you master this art of the state of being. So the more faith you have, less control you have. The more mind you allow your soul to use as a resource to evolve, instead of fighting against the evolutionary process, the more supernatural event will just happen, even if you don't egocentrically want it. Maybe your soul wants to try stuff. It could be cool. Imagine when you start to master these experiences and you can make a decision in your human level of ego, I want to create that, and boom, you manifest an event out of a pure personal desire, and it works because that personal desire is not against the will of God. It just flows along. Because the will of God is so available to each new possibility. Why do you think he has to argue with personal things? The problem is not when you're egocentric, satisfying yourself. The problem is when you do anything in your power against the evolution that God wants as a soul in you. Okay? So yes, you could have the power to create anything you want, to manifest, to modulate events of life so that they fit your desire. And they will so even more to the extent of your faith. You're letting go of the control. And that's not just a decision in the mind, in the head. Oh, I'll let go of control. Forget it. You need to do work on yourself so that the control structures that are set in place by nature, you will look at them, integrate them, and make them relax. They won't go away. They will just relax and start to act according to your will. Okay? And these 7 layers of that. Now, don't try to integrate. I'm going at this level. I'm not going to this level. Just integrate and see what pops up. And contemplate the depth of the atomic structure of your control. That's the hardest to shift because you need to be fourth-plane conscious, which is extremely rare, even as very evolved beings. Okay? Breathe. And relax. Each of these levels of the physical representation of reality, each of them will give you a different perspective on what you are, but each of them will tell you that you're tangible and limited in a prison. Each of these levels are telling you that you are in a dungeon you built for yourself, although it still is just untangible consciousness pretending to be tangible. Okay? It is not wisdom to start working on. It's wisdom to contemplate in a general sense, because this is so refined, you don't really need to go to that depth of refinement. But just for having the wisdom and keep it in mind while you have the reactions, while you have the integrations, while you have the wow moments, will allow you to understand this is what happens in nature as a mirror of what you are as a complete self at every level. Okay? And to understand that whenever these physical systems become stronger than the actual planes of yourself as a soul, hell breaks loose as an expression and an actual fact. Okay? It's rare, but it happens. again, apparently it was just an entertaining small talk, and everyone is transcending, wow. Because talking the truth of how the illusion is taught by the soul really awakens stuff inside us that reacts and have difficulty focusing on. But it's okay. Accept yourself. You're at this point. It's okay. This is like putting the great light of God here, and your soul at every level vertically is like a membrane with pictures on it, and this great light as God goes through the membrane and is projecting the drawing on the pellicula, like a movie, on the floor, the horizontal world. Okay? God is the projectionist. We are the pellicula of the movie, the film, and we're convinced to be on that screen. Because it's only that screen that tells us what we are. Through the illusion of our tangibility, senses, and the mind that comprehends that level. Okay? But in truth, not because I hold the truth, because I trust those who teach us with wisdom, when wisdom did deliver good result. The 32nd part of the Diamond Sutra has a few lines. All composed things are like a dream, a phantom, a drop of dew, a flash of lightning. That is how to meditate on them, that is how to observe them. First, all composed things are like a dream. All composed things. What is a composed thing? Bodhisattva understand non-composition, the undistinct experience. A composed thing is something that you can distinguish by observing it. Time seems to be something. Matter seems to be something. Your body, your breath seems to be something. Your mind seems to be something. These are composed things. Okay? The things that are grosser than the undistinct. All composed things are like a dream. While they are there, you are convinced that they are true. When you wake up from a dream, it was just a dream. Your heart beats fast because Godzilla was running after you, and you had gangsters trying to kill you, and you had stuff that it was a nightmare. And you go, it was just a dream. Well, a composed thing is something you believe is true and still is not exactly that. A phantom, a drop of dew, a flash of lightning. Now, what is common between a phantom or a ghost? A drop of dew, a flash of lightning. A phantom is something that could perceive but lacks tangibility. A drop of dew is something that happens, but when it happens, you don't see it happening, or when it goes away. It's just at one point there's dew in the morning and then there's not. In the inability to distinguish, like in the Tathagata, where it came from and where it's going. Okay? The drop of dew. It just happens. And the flash of lightning, the moment you grasp it, it's over. It pushes you to the present moment to the point there's not even a time to refer to as present moment. Okay? So these are metaphors on the true nature of reality. Every composed thing. The Buddha didn't say there are no composition. He said there are things that are composed, but you have to contemplate them like a dream, a phantom, a drop of dew, a flash of lightning. Then he goes on. That is how to meditate them. That is how to observe them. This Diamond Sutra is not telling us to only meditate until you cease to exist in reality. There's a part about this is how to observe them. And observation is eyes open, conscious, and contemplate in your mind well, maybe not physically eyes open, but in the sense it's not meditating to try to transcend and go off and disappear. It's observation where you are actively implicated in the art of contemplation. I am observing. I see it. That thing is impermanent, yet it is eternal. It is ego, but it is pure. It is just a dream. It doesn't mean it's in your head. It means it's a dream, like a dream. It's not. The Buddha didn't say it is a dream. Life is a dream. No, life is real, but it is similar to a dream. It is like a dream. It's not a dream. It doesn't happen just in your head. Everything here around us is really everything here around us. There is a reality. But there's something dreamlike about this reality if you can go beyond your senses that perceive it. So observe everything as it is a dream, a phantom, a drop of dew, a flash of lightning. Now there's something similar in all these four completely different metaphors. Dream, phantom, drop of dew, lightning. It is the inability for the intellect to grasp every aspect of its nature. It is the subtlety of the experience when it seems to be gross. So in a way, when we train you in the city meditation, this is what we do. We contemplate the most subtle level of existence. How can you change nature if you are so convinced it is hard and cannot be moved? How could you alter apparent reality if you are so fatalist about its permanent state? Supernatural experience to actually operate a phenomena of quantum metaphysics. It is required for you to refine your experience of what is perception, observing, meditation, to free yourself from the hardness yet nature made sure it would be hard while we need it. The mind of Brahma in the womb of Shakti made it that way that everything would be stable and organized and structured for us to evolve in while we need it. It doesn't mean that it's hard. It means it seems to be hard. It seems to be tangible. Breathe. Relax. You will see, maybe today, maybe another day, maybe another year, in a meditation, when you remember the intangibility of what seems to be tangible, your fear of dropping out of reality, your control of resisting it. Breathe and gaze inside. I encourage you to close your eyes. Contemplate the fluidity of apparent solidity. The fluidity of atomic nature of things, which is not hard grains, it's just potential consciousness, each spread apart over a great length of darkness and emptiness. Vacuity, Abu. And as a conscious being, as a soul, contemplate the emptiness of everything. Vacuity. Abu. Gently keeping in mind there is still an apparent reality held in place by nature, made mostly of nothing, except from a few waves of fluid consciousness made of the mind of God. Abu. 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 Go back to nothing. Empty your mind. Non-self. Non-dharma. Non-experience. Nothing. Abu. Relax. The most gentle way. Come back and observe. Those who are acquainted with the tent city do it. Me not fun. Consciously remember the embodiment of yourself as a soul in what appears to be tangible, physical flesh. Because in this realm, that is how it is. Gentle coming back to reality. I know, it's just words. Step by step, you will train yourself to be conscious beyond tangibility. And once you know how to stay conscious beyond tangibility, you start to influence tangibility as much as the mind of nature that tries to hold it as it is. Now, all that is required then is to absorb yourself in a pure thought at every level: consciousness, causality, wisdom, intellect, emotion, willpower, and feel it to be tangible, absorbed in a single reality for so long that it will overrule the mind of nature, and you will have consciously produced the new result that you want. If I would be so shallow as to tell you, imagine that you already have it for as long as you can. Well, yes, of course, you have millions of books and videos and people who tell you it's just that. And it does have its 10% of influence. It works. You want the 100% of the divine power. You want to have more. That requires you to challenge your system of perception, your belief, your ways, your egocentrism. It's required for an alchemist to accept the life of an ascetic man or woman before they can actually change something into gold. They can't if they still want the gold to have some kind of profit. It just doesn't work because your ego's in control. There's no faith. All right? Thank you.